And so you read that right. Today we're learning from a yogi master how to silence the mind based on his 21,900 hours or so, like 30 years of meditation practice.
You sit down to relax, but the mind is still running. And then you want to go to sleep. And many people have this problem, right? But the mind can't stop because it's been running, it's been active. And then you get to the point where, and so okay, you maybe you watch a few YouTube videos or something like that, and then and you know you're tired and you want to sleep, but the mind just wants, and then you get to the point where, oh, this is just it's it's futile. You get to the point where you feel that unless you do something deeper, your life is futile because, okay, you can, it's good to satisfy all the things you have to do in the other realms of your life. But unless and until you also satisfy that deep spiritual desire, the rest of your life will be futile. Because you'll end up metaphorically or literally in the middle of the night, not being able to sleep and not being able to do anything, just being frustrated because your being wants to be somewhere else, but there you are in the middle of the night, not being able to sleep. So it's very important that you live your life in such a way that you always try to do the right thing. So you have your conscience is clear. That's number one. And secondly, you must also have a spiritual practice in order to expand your mind, expand your sense of self into the infinite and satisfy your deepest longing, your deepest desire.
So before we get into...
This thing of the racing mind is a problem. And I know you want to talk about it. And there's lots of things we can do in order to tackle that thing. We can talk.
Yeah, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean, I have a lot to say on that. On it's part of the yogic lifestyle that there are various practices that we do in order to go beyond the mind. But that'll come out, I think, in our conversation as you ask me whatever you want to ask me.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to say, again, thank you so much for your time and for being open to share all the wisdom you've learned. I would love that we actually start with a practice, a meditation practice for 2 to 3 minutes. If you could guide us through it, that would be amazing.
Sure. Okay. So sitting with your eyes closed, your back straight, breathing calm and relaxed through your nose. The more calm and relaxed your breathing is, the more calm and relaxed your mind will be. And imagine that you are sitting in the most peaceful place that you can think of. You are completely at peace. Feel the peace all around you, surrounding you. Feel peace and happiness surrounding you, as though your being is enveloped by a warm feeling of peace and happiness. And feel that happiness is endless. It's infinite happiness. It's surrounding you and extending to infinity in every direction. That infinite happiness is the essence of the infinite consciousness of the universe. Feel that you are loved and supported and surrounded by that infinite consciousness of the universe. Feel it surrounding you and also within you. You are part of it, and it is within you. Identify more and more with that infinite feeling of happiness, that feeling of bliss all around you and within you. Feel that you are no longer your limited self, that you are merging into that feeling of infinite oneness, and that you are becoming one with it. And keep going like that for another minute or so, as we just sit in silence and feel more and more identified with that infinite oneness, that infinite consciousness. And now you can open your eyes and bring yourself back to the present day reality.
Thank you for this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's the basic, that's the essence of the idea of the meditation that I practice.
We have a question from one of our listeners that's called at Ride with Carmen. And she asks, how to deal with no progress in meditation and feeling stuck.
You can't expect to feel that everything is going well and everything is right every time you practice. As with any process, and especially for this one, because it's such a monumental task, there are ups and downs, and you may very often feel stuck. But feeling stuck or feeling that you're not making progress is not necessarily a bad thing. Because you have to, as with any work that you do, you have to encounter obstacles, and you have to get through those obstacles. When you encounter an obstacle, what happens? You immediately your progress is stopped. You have to stop, and you have to deal with that obstacle. So we have many obstacles in our minds. That's what we're dealing with. And in a way, they're the greatest obstacles. You can deal with physical obstacles that you come across in the world relatively easily. But to deal with the obstacles in your own mind, the baggage that we're all carrying in our minds, that's a long-term thing. That's a lifelong process. So we can't expect to get tangible results immediately. In fact, we say on the spiritual path, there are no tangible results at all. It's not a process of gaining anything. Rather, it's a process of losing yourself. So you have to get used to this idea that you are not going to gain anything. You're going to lose yourself. But when I say that, I should clarify that it doesn't mean losing your greater self. It means losing your small self or your individual self in order to gain your greater self, in order to gain the realization of your greater self. So this process is a process of transcending your individual mind into the cosmic mind. Like, for example, when a river flows into the sea, what happens? It loses its individual identity and becomes one with the identity of the sea. That's what's happening in the spiritual path. And that's what's happening in everyone's lives, regardless of whether they're aware of it or not. This is a gradual transformation, an evolution of mind. According to the yogic philosophy, the human journey is an evolution of mind, an expansion of mind, ultimately into the cosmic mind, which is the infinite. The river flows into the sea. And we're all going through that process, but that process is a lifelong process. And we will feel stuck at some times. We will feel inspired at other times. We will feel disappointed. We will feel blissful. We will feel according to where we are on that path. So, for example, you come across an obstacle. Okay, you feel stuck. You feel disappointed because your progress is stopped by that obstacle. Then you have to exert force mental force in order to get through that obstacle. Then you get through that obstacle, you feel inspired. You feel, I just got through that obstacle. You feel inspiration. So the path is, there are ups and downs on the path. And the idea is to keep it in perspective, to have a process, as I said before, to have the process which works for you, and to be disciplined in practicing that process, and not to expect immediate rewards or immediate results, but to always keep in mind that the process is a lifelong process, and just keep working at it, keep working at it. If you look at anybody that's successful in any sphere in the world, be that sport or entertainment or business, whatever it is, people that are successful are not distracted, or are not dissuaded or by failure. Failure is that same failure is a part of success. The more failures, the more ultimate success you have. The important thing is to keep going, to keep trying, and then you will succeed.
So usually people take psychedelics to kind of get a glimpse of the divine.
Yeah.
Now, I personally I believe in the natural path more. And I just want to see from your side, what was the most mystical experience you had whilst meditating? So there was a question from one of our viewers that asks, when meditating, what kind of mental realm did you ascend to after having a deep meditation?
Yeah, you're right that with psychedelics, you can get a glimpse into the kind of realms or the kind of states of mind that you can achieve with spiritual practice and meditation. But I don't recommend, okay, you may take psychedelics or whatever in order to get a glimpse, but it's not going to take you. You mentioned Ram Dass before. Ram Dass said that he took thousands and thousands of trips of LSD. He was one of the pioneers of LSD with Timothy Leary at Harvard University. I think they were the only two professors in the history of Harvard to get expelled from Harvard University, something like that.
Yeah,
because of the LSD experiments that they were doing. And he said that in all those thousands of trips that he did, every time he would say to himself, I'm never going to come down. This time I'm never going to come down. But of course, he always did. So psychedelics can give you a glimpse. It's like you see how you want to look inside the house. You can climb up and you can look in the window, but then you have to come down again. To go into the house, you have to go around and you have to go through the door. And the process of going through the door so that you don't have to come down again, you don't have to come out of the house again, is spiritual practice or meditation. So in that process of spiritual practice, whenever you meditate,
Mm.
You can feel, I mean, there's many times that I've felt that I'm transcending the mind and that I'm expanding my sense of existence.
Mm.
But at the same time, you can't describe that feeling. You know, Ramakrishna, many times Ramakrishna used to go into samadhi. He was a great yogi and guru of the 1800s, and he had a lot of followers, and they used to visit him every day. And he would be slipping in and out of samadhi, in and out of that trance-like state where you're feeling oneness with the infinite. And then he would come back, and they would ask him, "What was it like?" And he said, if a salt, he used to use that an example. If you made a doll out of salt, and you put it in the sea, it's not going to come back. It's going to dissolve in the sea.
Mm.
The salt doll can't tell you what the sea was like when it goes to fathom the sea. So in the same way, you can't even, you can remember it as a blissful experience, but it's very difficult to express the feeling of bliss, the feeling of oneness, cosmic consciousness, because it's a state beyond the mind. And so, for example, if you eat a banana, you have that taste. But how do you describe it to someone? You can say it's a sweet taste. You can say it's a sweet experience. You can say it's a blissful experience. But you cannot describe it because it's beyond the mind. So this is the dilemma. This is the paradox. Spirituality is paradoxical. 1 plus 1 in spirituality, in maths, 1 plus 1 equals 2. But in spirituality, 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. Spirituality is paradoxical. You're using your mind in order to transcend itself, to lose itself. Once you transcend the mind, you cannot think about what you're experiencing, let alone express it verbally, because you need the mind to do that. And once you come back from that experience and can use your mind again, then that experience is on the other side of the mind, so you can't access it anymore. So the whole thing is a paradox. And it reflects the paradox of many of human life in general, that we're torn between the mundane, the material, and the spiritual, the divine. That's why, as I said before, we can satisfy, say, for example, in all the things that we do during the day, we can satisfy our physical and mental desires and longings through all the different things that we have to do in our lives, and all the different ways which, as a humanity, we have developed so much technology and science, and all the different ways in which we can satisfy our physical and mental desires and longings. But then at the same time, we're torn between all those different things, those mundane things, and our desire for ultimate spiritual longing, for the divine, for the infinite. And that's why we can end up in the middle of the night just being completely frustrated with all the other things in our lives, and feeling that we don't have anywhere else to go, but feeling at the same time that we want to go somewhere. We want to expand into the infinite. But how are we going to do that? So for that, we have to restore the concept of spiritual practice into humanity, into human life. As I said before, it used to be satisfied to a certain extent by religion, but then half the population of the world, for example, I guess half the population is still very religious, but half the population of the world, especially those in the West, especially young people that are used to living a modern lifestyle, we've done away with the whole concept of religion and spiritual practice. Now, I'm not saying we need to bring religion back, but we need to bring the essence of religion back, which is spiritual practice, because that's the one thing which is going to ultimately satisfy us. We're satisfying ourselves to a limited degree by, okay, we eat, we satisfy our hunger, we whatever we do, we satisfy a limited desire. But ultimately, we're going to need that to satisfy that infinite, that unlimited desire that we all have within us. And whatever else we do, however successful we become in other spheres of life, it's not going to make any difference unless we have also been working on that infinite desire, and we're in the process of satisfying it. Because no matter how much success you have, no matter how much wealth you have, no matter how much satisfaction you have in all the limited areas of your lives, if you're not in the process of satisfying that infinite desire, then you're going to feel it. You're going to feel the loss. There's a saying. It's a bit of a cheap saying, but I like to say it. If you don't go within, you'll go without. You have to go within. You have to.
I used to overthink a lot, like like a stupid amount. Like I wasn't able to make decisions because I was so trapped in my mind. And my only solution was, and I still face this, is to try to fight the monkey mind. And what's your expert advice on this?
You can't fight it. You can't fight it. If you try to fight, if you try to suppress, suppression is not the answer. Suppression will never work. For example, we see there's one or two in particular situations in the world today where one country or peoples are trying to suppress another one. It will never work. You have to create something new, something stronger, something greater. So rather than fighting your mind, you have to build a new thought in your mind. Rather than fighting all the thoughts in your mind, you have to build a greater thought. If you want to say, for example, there is a small tree and it's surrounded by different weeds and grass and things like that, the more that tree grows, the more it will, all the different plants around it will die down, and that tree will dominate. You have to build a great dominating thought in your mind. And that dominating thought should be the thought of the infinite, the feeling of the infinite, the feeling of infinite, of divine grace, of infinite happiness within you. You have to cultivate, just like you cultivate that tree and you help it to grow. You have to cultivate that thought and feeling in your mind through the practice of meditation. You can't fight all the monkey thoughts in your mind just by getting angry with them or telling them to quieten down or whatever, because that's just going to be another monkey thought. So you have to work on it every day, cultivating that greater feeling, getting in touch with that greater feeling of love, of divinity within yourself and all around yourself, of seeing it within yourself through the practice of closing your mind, closed eyes meditation, and also feeling it in others through all your different interactions with people. You not only meditate with your eyes closed, but you also meditate by interacting with others, interacting with the world, and feeling the love and connection between you and the rest of the world, between you and the rest, all the different people in the world, all the different beings in the world, the whole universe. You have to cultivate that feeling of connection and love with your own self, within yourself, and with everyone and everything else with the entire universe all around you. You have to cultivate in your life every day. And it's because we've evolved from, according to the yogic philosophy, our own minds have evolved over many different lifetimes. And many of those lifetimes we started with as microbes, and we gradually evolved. This is for each and every one of us. We gradually evolved over millions and millions of years through all the different stages of plant and animal life, and we've attained the human life now. And this human life is a process of, as we've been talking about, transcendence, of taking it further and going from animality to humanity to divinity. Now we're at humanity. Now we're trying to get to divinity, but we come from animality. And that animality has always told us, yes, it's us against the world. We are an individual entity, an individual being, and we have to fight in order to survive. Now, of course, now as human beings, as humanity, we still have that feeling of individuality and fighting against the rest of the world within us. And we have to utilize that to a certain extent in order to survive. But we don't want it to control us and to limit us any further. So at the same time as using it to survive, we have to transcend it in order to get to where we really want to get to. So this is the process. We've come from animality. We're currently at the stage of humanity, but we want to expand that state of humanity into divinity.
So then, if I understand what you're saying, it's kind of, you should have a certain amount of ego, but then the majority of it should be towards the divine.
Right. You have to maintain a certain sense of individual existence in order to survive.
Yeah.
And in order to do all the things that you have to do, including your spiritual practice, you have to make the circumstances first. You know, if you don't have enough food to eat, if you're hungry, you cannot sit down and meditate because the only thing you can think of is you're hungry. So first of all, you have to satisfy your physical needs and your psychic needs as well, your needs of intellectual expression, creative expression, things like that. Okay, you have to satisfy your physical and your mental needs and desires. And then you have to sit down every day and try to transcend all those things at the same time. That's why I said before that this human life is paradoxical, because we're trying to do two things at the same time. But the more you are able to expand your sense of self into a greater self, the less important will be the other things.
Mm.
And you'll feel that you're not working so much on your own individual efforts, but things are happening and you're able to do everything more and more by divine grace, because the more you identify with divinity, with the infinite of the universe and the infinite within yourself, the more you are going to be able to do things intuitionally rather than intellectually. The more things will be able to happen naturally because you're in the divine flow. The more you're in that cosmic flow, the less effort you will have to make individually. The more you identify with infinity, with divinity, the less you identify individually, and therefore the more things will happen to you by the grace of the divinity rather than by the grace of your own individual efforts.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
It's a process. It's a process of maintaining. You have to maintain a sense of individual existence, both personally, and also you have to help others in order to needs as well. If you see someone in need of food, of shelter, of help in any way, part of the spiritual path is to help that person. Or if you see an animal in distress, or whatever it may be, if it's an animal or a plant, watering a plant, not killing animals for food, helping people as much as you can, all these things are important, because the more you expand your sense of being, the more you realize that all beings are part of you. And so the more you help all beings, the more feeling of expansion of self that you have. It's a kind of an automatic, it's a self-fulfilling process. The more you help yourself, the more expanded you feel in your own self, the more you feel that others are part of your own self. And so the more you feel, the more you help others, the more that reinforces your feeling of expansion and feeling of oneness with everyone and everything.
That is beautiful. That shows the power of practicing service daily, not only for others, because there's a good feeling attached to it, helping someone, but it also
Service is a huge part of the spiritual path, and it may be why you quoted one of your listeners before that said she felt stuck. It may be the reason why you feel stuck. If you feel stuck, for example, go and help someone, and it will make you feel good. It will inspire you. You're not only, when you help someone selflessly, meaning without the expectation of getting anything in return, without the expectation of getting a reward, the greatest reward, of course, is that it will give you such inspiration and feeling of peace and connection. It actually helps you, even though you don't expect anything in return, even though you don't expect anything out of it. It helps you the most. It helps the people. It helps the person that you're helping, of course, but it actually helps you the most. So service, helping others, selfless service without any desire for get anything back, is one of the two pillars of the spiritual path. We say that there are two pillars: self-realization and service to all. So self-realization means that you work on that process of realizing yourself as the greater self through meditation. And service to all means at the same time you do whatever you can to help others in their own, in fulfilling their own search, their own path.
that is beautiful, because it's kind of a process that's not only limited to just sitting down and meditating, but it's more a way of life. And
right, it's a way of life.
Yeah, and I want to explore more Ananda, the yoga you practice, which is called, if I'm not wrong, Ananda Yoga or Ananda Mudra.
Ananda Marga. Ananda Marga.
Ananda Marga.
In Sanskrit, it means path of bliss. Ananda means bliss, and Marga means path. So Ananda Marga means path of bliss.
And so I want to discover from you, what are the practices that people can incorporate in their daily life to feel that bliss more and more? Or there's some you recommend?
Okay, so it's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And first of all, there are some practices for looking after your health, and like you can say health and hygiene. So you do things every day which are going to maintain a certain level of health. Then ethics, as I said before, always try to do the right thing. So ethics and morality are very important, so you can have a clear conscience. Without a clear conscience, you can't progress. You must always, whatever situation you're in, if it's most situations, it's pretty easy to do the right thing because there's no real conflict between your own well-being and the well-being of others. But if doing the right thing, for example, means that you have to sacrifice your own well-being for the greater well-being, the well-being of others, or the well-being of your community, or the well-being of the society or the world in general, then try to do the right thing and sacrifice a bit of your own well-being and comfort for the well-being of others. That will really help you a lot, because the greatest treasure, the greatest wealth is a clear conscience, peace of mind, knowing that under difficult circumstances, you acted for the good of others as well as the good of yourself. As I said, in most situations, it should be the good of yourself as well as the good of others. But if there's a conflict between the two, try to make the sacrifice and do something great. Then it will give you a great sense of well-being and a very clear conscience. So that's the second thing. Then food. I alluded to this a couple of times just now. Try not to eat anything with a face. By that I mean, animals, right? Because they have a developed sense of, they also have, not as developed as ours, but they also have a developed sense of consciousness, of awareness. Human beings have the most developed sense of awareness, and that's also our problem as well as our, but animals. So we say in yoga, if plant nutrition is available, eat the plant nutrition, because plants are relatively unaware. They suffer less when you kill them than animals. So food is also very important, not only because of its, and also plants have a more sentient effect on the mind. They have a good effect on the mind as well as the body. So vegetarianism, for example, is not only good for the animals. In general, animals appreciate it if you don't eat them. So it's not only good for the animals, but also good for the planet. Plant nutrition is a lot more sustainable ecologically, but also for the body and also for the mind. It's very important. That's the third thing. Then we talked about service. Service, very important, as we talked about.
Yeah.
Helping others. And then yoga postures. Yoga postures are, because when you do yoga, I'm talking about the kinds of things that you go to a yoga studio and you do a session of yoga, and they take you through a few postures or whatever. The general concept of yoga postures is that they balance the mind, because it's like giving your endocrine glands. Your endocrine glands are the ones that secrete different hormones that affect your mind, that affect the way you think and the way you feel. Now, generally, we have an imbalance in certain hormones, and so we feel negative emotions. But if you practice the right yoga postures, it's like they're giving your endocrine glands a kind of an internal massage. So they're regulating your endocrine glands, and that in turn regulates the hormonal secretion of those glands, and therefore makes your mind feel more balanced and at peace. So yoga postures, or we say asanas in Sanskrit, are also important. And then we have kirtan. Kirtan is a phenomenon. It's a kind of a spiritual singing, chanting. It's a phenomenon which has become more and more popular. Of course, you mentioned Ram Dass before, and Nimkaroli Baba. Well, for example, they also do kirtan. A lot of kirtan. Krishna Das, a contemporary of Ram Dass, has become quite famous for kirtan. And there's a lot of other kirtan singers that from the West, from India as well as from the West, that have become very popular these days amongst spiritual seekers. So the the concept of singing a mantra, repeating a mantra, not as you do in meditation internally, but singing it is also very good, very important, and very helpful. If it's a mantra with the right meaning, the mantra should always have the meaning of divinity, the feeling of divinity, the feeling of getting closer, of being in love with the cosmic entity, with the infinite consciousness of the universe. So you can imagine that if you sing such a mantra with that vibration and with that meaning and with that ideation, rather than scrolling on your phone and that, what do they call it? The scroll of death, or the doom scroll, doom scrolling, right? Rather than doom scrolling, which takes you nowhere, and you just end up, if you, as we talked about before, if you keep doom scrolling into the middle of the night, and then you're going to end up in the middle of the night not knowing what else you can do, not having anywhere else to go. That doom scrolling has taken you nowhere. Instead of doom scrolling, sing kirtan, sing the name of the divine, sing with the feeling of closeness and love of the cosmic entity. So that's very important. And then that leads into meditation, which is that same concept, except that you are closing your eyes and you're repeating a mantra within you. I didn't give you the mantra when we did the introductory meditation, but you can get your own personal mantra that you can repeat within yourself. And the more you repeat that within yourself, it's like a vibration in your being, in the essence of your being, which is vibrating love and happiness and that feeling of oneness, of connection within your being. The more you do that, of course, the more you will feel that you're coming closer to what you ultimately want to attain within yourself. And so that's just so all those different things lead into, I started with the most basic, the most mundane, and we got to meditation, which is at the top, which is at the pinnacle of the pyramid. And that's what's ultimately going to, that first of all, kirtan, singing kirtan will lead into the mantra of the kirtan will lead into the mantra of the meditation. And then both those mantras, first singing aloud and then repeating silently within yourself, will take you to ultimately to your goal. But as I said before, it's a lifelong process. You can't expect for it to happen just like that. That's why discipline is also a very big part of the spiritual path.
That's so beautiful that you broke it down from the most fundamental to the highest point. I would love to explore, based on your 30-year experience, 21,900 hours of meditations, what are the key pointers that if you were to guide someone right now in a meditation, you would point out for them to have an effective one?
Well, first of all, try to do as many of those things that I just talked about as possible. The health and hygiene, the morality, ethical standard, the food, eating vegetarian food, service, helping others as much as possible, yoga postures, kirtan, leading into the meditation. Now, when you're meditating, try to do it at the same place each time, so you can build up a vibration. If you have a particular corner of your room that you can you dedicate that to your meditation, or you may be able to dedicate a whole room to meditation. Well and good. Or you may like to sit on the veranda or in the garden, wherever it is. Try to maintain that place. That one place is your meditation place. Of course, you can meditate in other places, but it's good if you can build up the vibration. Then use a yoga mat, not a yoga mat, but a meditation mat. So have a kind of a square blanket or piece of cloth that you only use for your meditation. It's a special piece of cloth that you use for your meditation. That will also help to build up the vibration. And then meditate at the same time each day. So the best times, for example, are when the sun, dawn and dusk, when the sun is rising and the sun is setting, because at those times the vibration is very peaceful. When the sun is rising and the sun is setting, you may have noticed that the vibration is peaceful then. So try to meditate at those two times. If you can't do that, okay, but try to optimize. It's a matter of optimizing the practice as much as you can. Then, tell people that while you're meditating, unless the house is burning down, don't interrupt me. Don't, if you hear your phone go ding, don't just jump, oh, who was that? Turn it off. Keep that, say for example, you're meditating for half an hour, just maintain that half an hour as a sacred time and space where you're not disturbed. Then do your meditation, and then when your meditation is over, then and try to do your meditation before you eat. So you do your meditation, then you can do some yoga postures afterwards. Then you can, after your yoga postures, you can, you do the deep relaxation, you relax completely. Then you might like to do a bit of inspirational reading, just to bring yourself, when you're coming, you've done your meditation, you've done your yoga postures, the mind is assimilating all the different benefits of the meditation and the yoga postures. And then just before you eat, you might like to just do a bit of, just read something inspirational, and then have a vegetarian meal. So those are some hints. That there's probably more that I could think of, but those are some hints to optimize your practice. As I said, it's a matter of course, you can't do everything perfectly in your life. As human beings, we're imperfect. Human life is a constant struggle to maintain a balance, to optimize our lives. But of course, we get some things wrong, we get some things right, and we get some things wrong. So as with life, spiritual practice is also a process of trying to optimize as much as possible the different factors, and then doing your meditation as best as you can. As I said before, it may not always be blissful. You may not always feel inspired. Of course, you will feel blissful. You will feel inspired. You'll feel it more and more and more as time goes on. But there'll be times when you feel stuck, as your listener said before. You'll feel stuck. You'll feel uninspired. You'll feel that you don't know where to go from here. But the essence is the most important thing is to keep going. I think it was Churchill that said, what did he say? Something about, I can't remember it now, but the essence was when you feel that your everything is going to hell, just keep going, and you'll get out of it. You'll get out of it eventually. But you have to, that's why I said discipline. You have to keep making the effort. Effort is very important. Have faith in the process and practice it sincerely.
I do have a question that's pretty interesting. You have now 21,900 hours approximately. What would you give advice?
After today, it'll be 21,902.
So you have that amount of practice now. So what would you recommend yourself before you started this entire journey of meditation? What would you recommend him so that he maybe would suffer a bit less?
Oh, you mean before someone starts practicing meditation?
Yes. So what would you tell him on the process on how to go about it so he can not kind of lose himself in beating the mind and just doing effectively?
Well, first of all, I would recommend that people adopt a practice of meditation and practice it. But if you can't do that, or if you don't want to do that, just spend more time with yourself and less with everything else. So even if you don't want to practice meditation, just say, okay, an hour a day, I am going to drop everything else that I'm doing and go and sit in the garden and just with my own thoughts, or go for a walk, or do something that you're going to be just with your own thoughts, just with yourself. And that will be hugely beneficial, even if you're not meditating. You know, this concept of children today, they're always on their phones and devices, right? That's what people say. And it's a very, I don't have children because I'm a monk, I'm not a parent, but I always think that if I ever had children, I would ban devices until the age of 14 or 15. Because it's very destructive that children, I remember when I was a child, we used to get bored and we'd have to think of ways of amusing ourselves. That's very constructive. It's very constructive. But children don't have that these days. So you have to give yourself an opportunity every day to get bored. Right? Because otherwise, there's no way that you can be bored because you're always on, there's always some kind of input.
Mm.
What will happen if you give yourself the opportunity to be bored, just as we used to do when we were kids, we used to think of ways of amusing ourselves. You'll come up with, your creativity will blossom. You'll come up with solutions to your problems. Especially, for example, if you're many times, I've been singing kirtan or meditating, and I'll get a flash of creativity or an insight or a way of resolving something. But even without kirtan and meditation and all the different spiritual practices, even if you just give yourself time to be alone with yourself, it will be hugely beneficial because automatically insights will arise in your mind, solutions will arise in your mind, and you'll get inspiration out of it. But ultimately it's better if you use, not only do you give yourself time to be alone with yourself, but you give yourself more time to also be alone with yourself, but you're doing the meditation, you're doing the spiritual practice. So in general, I would say less screen time, more real time.
I like this. For most people, what you just said, get bored, is equal to torture for themselves because it's so hard to be alone, facing your own thoughts.
You know, you see so many different instances of people going into jail and they're in solitary confinement and they come out, they're a complete, you look at Nelson Mandela, you see a photo of him before he went into jail and a photo when he came out, he was a completely different person. He was a saint when he came out of jail. Now, I'm not saying that we should go into jail, but the point is that jail time or that torture of being alone and having nothing to do can actually be very, very constructive. Because feeling pleasure all the time, you don't expand your sense of self. There's no impetus to grow. Growth comes out of suffering, comes out of difficulty. It's a fact. Now, in today's world, we've become used to expecting comfort and pleasure. And if we don't get comfort and pleasure, we think, oh, there's something wrong. We have to do something in order to correct this. You know, I'm not feeling comfortable. I'm not feeling pleasure. What can I do to feel comfortable and to feel pleasure? But that's not necessarily constructive, because it's only in difficult situations that you grow. So we also have to give ourselves difficult situations. And then, as we talked about before, if you overcome those obstacles, if you overcome difficult situations, then you will feel more inspired. So we have to give ourselves, that also feeds into the concept of service. When you help others without expecting anything in return, you're going to put yourself in situations where you aren't necessarily comfortable, or where you're feeling difficulties, where you're feeling that you're fighting against. Okay, you're sacrificing your own individual comfort and pleasure for somebody else's. That's a good thing, because through that process of difficulty, of sacrificing your own pleasure and comfort, you're growing. That good feeling that you get from helping others is that feeling of growth and inspiration.
There's a lot of humbleness that goes into service, because sometimes the little ego mind can come in and say, how am I going to just sacrifice my comfort, my to help a complete stranger? But
you can do it. You just start with something small. So just start with, if you see, for example, it's a cliche now, but an old lady is crossing the road, help her across the road. It's a very small thing. Help her to get to the other side of the road safely. And of course, she may not even need the help, but that feeling of connection, she will appreciate. Somebody is thinking about me. As you get older, you feel more and more that the world is passing you by. You feel that, So for old people, I realize it more now because I'm older. But for old people, they feel that they're being left behind. Just that small feeling of that instance of connection, that somebody is thinking of you, that somebody is still considering you, still helping you, is very important. So start with something small like that, and then the sky's the limit. You can do so many things in order to help those around you, to help your community, to help your society, to help the entire planet. There is so many things that you can do, both online and off. You start with something small and it'll grow. And then, of course, the more you're meditating at the same time, you're growing your sense of self, you're growing your sense of connection, you're growing your sense of connectedness with others, with other people, with other beings, with the entire world. And so it feeds into itself as a kind of an automatic self-fulfilling machine, that the more introspection and meditation you do, the more connected you feel to others, the more you help others. So it grows like that.
There's a lot of, now talking about separation and connection, there's a lot of hate online. And a lot of it's coming from not knowing that doesn't matter if it's that religion or that race or that whatever. What is your message for someone who's stuck in his separated self and doesn't realize the essential truth of life?
It's true that there's a lot of hate, but all the hate in the world is coming from a sense of separation and frustration, and not feeling connected and not feeling respected by others. Now, essentially, as human beings, there is nothing that should divide us. There is no reason, rationally, why we should feel hatred towards anyone else. But we do, because we feel these barriers that are imposed upon us. We feel say, for example, we are taught that, okay, you are one religion and somebody else is another religion, and your religion is the right one and the other religion is the wrong one. That is an artificial barrier that has been imposed on people. Essentially, we are not different. Essentially, we don't have different religions. We only have the one religion of connection with the divinity within ourselves and within all others, which is the same divinity. But that feeling of separateness, of that divisiveness has been imposed upon us. The same with the country, the same with the culture. The Israeli people, for example, are not necessarily any different to the Palestinian people, but it's that culture, the country, the culture, and the religion which is causing the division, which is causing the pain. So we have to feel more and more that, I'll give you an example. Once I don't like to do this, and I've never done it since, but once I went into a mainstream group, I think it was called Atheism and Science and Atheism or something like that. And I said to them, I joined the group, and I said to them, is anyone open to discussing the possibility of a higher meaning to life or something like that? I can't remember exactly what it was. And immediately I got I couldn't believe the hatred that came back at me. Like people were just calling me the worst things, right? And then I said to one of these people, like he had called me like the worst thing that you could call someone, the C word, right? In the English language, I think the C word is the. Yeah. And I said to him, well, I just, rather than reacting, I thought, okay, I'll just try and, like he must be feeling pain. So I just kind of, tried to make a connection with him on the basis of, okay, you must be feeling really frustrated or painful. How can I help you? And as soon as I did that, he changed. He regretted what he'd said. And so people are, hate is the result of pain and separation and frustration that people are feeling. For example, a terrorist attack is the result of nobody wants to ruin their lives by being killed as terrorists or by being incarcerated because of what they did as a result of a terrorist action. Nobody wants to do that, but they do that out of a feeling of fear and anger and suppression. If one culture, if one society or culture or religion or whatever it is suppresses another one, oppresses another people or peoples, those people are going to feel suppressed, those people are going to feel oppressed, those people are going to feel exploited, and therefore they will feel angry and hateful. So what we have to do is, on an individual basis, always keep in mind that there is no reason to hate anybody. There is no reason to exploit anybody. There is no reason to oppress anybody. We are all, as human beings, we are one human family. And at the same time, we have to try to build a world. We're in the process of doing it. It may look as though we're not getting very far at the moment, but we have to try to build a world which respects all people. Like, for example, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If rather than reacting like they did and killing thousands and thousands of civilians, the Israelis had said, okay, let us look at the genesis of this. We have had this conflict with the Palestinian people for the last century or whatever it's been, the last 70, 80 years. We are fearful and angry because they've been attacking us. But why have they been attacking us? Because we came in and we've been taking their land. And, it may or may not be justified. I can't say that. There's a whole history going back thousands and thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than doing this like reaction thing, can we not say, look, let us get together and talk about this? After apartheid in South Africa, they had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee under Desmond Tutu, who was a great, he was a great, I believe him and Mandela were spiritualists in their own rights. And they were able to resolve, despite the whole system of apartheid being so painful for the black people of South Africa, they were able to reconcile through this Truth and Reconciliation Committee with their oppressors. And they were able to, there's many instances where victims of crimes have been able to confront their attackers or the people that have committed crimes against them and reconcile with them and understand that there was a reason why these things happened. So if we can go beyond the reflexive reactions, the immediate reactions to what people are, someone does something to us and then we do it to them, and as a reaction, and as a reaction, they do it to us again, and then it goes on. If we can try to get beyond that, go beyond that, and look at the genesis, look at the way in which things have evolved, and try to come to a solution based on that, rather than just a knee-jerk reaction, then we can gradually start to build a better society. So it's a matter of doing that individually and collectively. Individually, because we all have regrets. We all think to ourselves, we've all got our own baggage. We all think to ourselves, I could have done that, but I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. These are all things that weigh on our minds. So the process of meditation is working through all that, purifying the mind, expanding the mind. And at the same time, if we can do that in the world, collectively in our society, amongst peoples of different upbringing, different cultures, different religions, different nationalities, whatever, but in the process realizing that all those things are artificial barriers. It's like a field, a meadow in nature, and you build a fence in the field. That fence is not natural, it's man-made. That fence does not need to be there. It's not the natural course of events. So in the same way, the more and more we realize that all the different barriers that have been put up between ourselves and other people are artificial barriers. They're not natural. The ultimate naturality is oneness. It's the feeling of that we're all one family. And I'm not only talking about human beings, but animals and plants too. The whole universe, the entire universe is one universal family of oneness. Different expressions, different diversities, but all the same expressions of the one state of existence.
I am just in awe, first of all. Second of all, I believe that this message could really, really change things. And I do wish sometimes that all the political leaders and presidents were spiritual teachers. I think that would make a difference. Um,
That's a vision. That's a vision that we have for the future. Actually, that I said before that if we can build a better world, there is actually a system that my guru gave, that a socio-economic system that he gave, that I believe if we implemented it, would make a better world. And part of that is to have more spiritually enlightened leaders. Now, how that's going to come about, I have no idea whatsoever. But you're right. If the political leaders of the world can be more enlightened, of course, I'm not talking about fully enlightened like Buddha or whoever, but because that's the end goal. But at least more enlightened than they are today.
yeah.
The world will be automatically, it will start to be a better place.
Exactly. A lot of things you talked about separation, how there's oneness. A lot of people, especially with what's going on in Israel and Palestine, there's a lot of remorse. Actually, there's no remorse. I'm not talking about remorse. I meant resentment. A lot of resentment in people's hearts. A lot of hatred, one side to the other. So even though it's not easy to forgive what's happening because it's not human, what's your message on forgiveness?
My guru said that on a personal level, we should try to forgive as much as possible on a personal level. But if somebody has done something that has not only hurt me personally, but has hurt the society in any way, then they should only be forgiven when they rectify their actions. So it's good to forgive someone as much as you can on a personal level. That will also help you, because if you can't forgive, that will eat at you. That will eat away at you as well. So it's good to forgive on a personal level, but on a social level, we should only forgive someone's actions when they have corrected them and resolved to not do that again.
So
there's
sorry to interrupt.
There's this thing called game theory, where they've been studying the interaction between the ways that two different parties could optimally interact with each other. And what they found was that the most effective way of interacting was to always be as friendly as possible with the other party. But if that party did something against you, then you have to make it clear to them that they should not do that again for the future of your relationship to continue to be good. Because they experimented with different models, and they found that the best one was, okay, if one reacted again, then okay, there should be a kind of a resistance there to more bad behavior. But once that bad behavior is corrected, then it can be a congenial relationship again. So there has to be some kind of accountability, right? There has to be some accountability. People's actions on the social level. But if it's just a personal thing, then forgive as much as you can.
On an individual level, what are the questions people need to ask themselves to do the right action?
You have to act according to your conscience. This concept of conscience is very important, because ultimately I think we all know what's right and what's wrong deep within ourselves. And I think the feeling of conscience is how well you are connected to your inner sense of right and wrong. So to a certain extent, it's an analytical process. Okay, you can think about it and you can by analyzing intellectually a certain situation, you can decide to a certain extent what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. But ultimately, the best way of deciding is to go according to your conscience, what you feel deep inside is the right thing to do.
But to trust kind of that intuitive feeling that this is right, this is wrong.
Right. Right. And that will naturally increase the more you practice meditation and spiritual practice as well.
We talked about in everything we talked about transcending the mind. I would love to see, because a huge part in my experience was opening the heart. And so what's your experience with that? And do you have any transformative stories or experience you went through where you realized the power of the heart?
Well, opening the heart, that's one way of saying that you're opening yourself up more to the will of the universal consciousness. You're becoming more connected, you're becoming more in tune with the cosmic will, the heart of the universe.
Do you happen to know Michael A. Singer?
I think I've heard the name, but I don't know him, no.
And he has a quote that's really powerful. He says, closing your heart doesn't do you any benefit. And so let's start there. For example, what do you think blocks the heart chakra from opening?
If people feel that they've been wronged, if they're frustrated, if they feel disconnected, if any kind of negative emotion is going to close the heart and close or not leave one open to the possibility of connection and love between oneself and others. The heart is the center of love. When you feel love, you feel it in your heart. Now, love, of course, is a very abstract concept, and it isn't always, if very rarely at all, felt or defined in the right way. For example, people often feel that love is when they feel love when somebody else makes them happy. That's their definition of love. But actually, that's not the real definition of love. Love is a feeling of connection that you have with someone or something. The universe can be anything within the universe, up to the whole universe itself. That you have a feeling of connection that you have regardless of whether that person or that thing makes you happy or not. And ultimately, real love is a feeling of connection where you're willing to sacrifice your own personal or sense of pleasure or sense of well-being for the well-being of a greater sense of self. And that feeds back into what meditation means. Meditation means the opening of the heart, the expansion of the heart, the expansion of oneself, ultimately to a feeling of connection and oneness to the greater self, the infinite consciousness of the whole universe. So love, in the deepest sense of the word, means devotion. Devotion means a connection with all things and the entire universe on the basis of feeling oneness with all things in the entire universe. So love essentially means to be one with, to a feeling of oneness with it, not only a feeling of connection and pleasure that you get from somebody or something else, but that feeling of being one with somebody or something else, or ultimately the infinite consciousness of the entire universe. So this concept of opening the heart is really opening oneself up to realizing one's oneness with the universe, one's oneness with everyone else. What closes the heart is when we feel disconnected, we feel angry, we feel all the negative emotions will close the heart, will leave the heart closed to a feeling of connection with others.
I don't know why it just popped to mind, but I just thought of Jesus and the cross and how that is a symbol. What do you think about that?
Well, personally, I consider that Jesus was a great yogi, and there's a lot of evidence that he, between the ages of 12 and 30, 18 years, he traveled to India and he learned the practice of, he learned Buddhism as well as the practice of yoga and Tantra. And then he went back and had to, and then there's a lot of evidence also that he didn't die on the cross. The so-called resurrection was that he, for whatever reason, there are different theories, but he was not dead when they brought him down from the cross. And, you know, they say he was resurrected, but the resurrection is just the fact that he survived the cross. And there's evidence also that he returned to the east later, and he died in Kashmir in the north of India, and his tomb is still apparently there. But this whole concept of dying on the cross, okay, it was morphed into later into Christianity. You know, try to do the right thing under any given circumstance. Don't give in to crime. Don't give in to corruption. Don't give in to any situation which goes again, where people are trying to exploit others, where people are trying to oppress others. Try to fight these things from happening in the world. And you may, as we were talking about before, this concept of service, it may not feed into your own concept of comfort and pleasure, but it will ultimately lead to your own emancipation. Dying on the cross is a symbol of, it's a symbol of sacrificing your individual self for the greater self. It's a symbol of flowing into the sea. It's a symbol of identifying more and more with a greater sense of being at the cost of your own individual sense of being, yes, but attaining a greater sense of being. So I think the whole concept of dying on the cross has been misinterpreted. And there's a lot of things that we can, the life and the teachings of Jesus directly from his example, rather than the misinterpretations that have evolved into the religion of.
Yeah.
And of course, those misinterpretations have come into conflict with misinterpretations of Islam, for example, and other religions. So it's all these misinterpretations, these misconceptions that are causing the conflict and the division and the separation of people in human society. The essence, the truth, the real truth, which is the same for all people of all religions and all countries and all cultures and nationalities, is one, is the same. We are all one.
I think that is there couldn't have been a better scripted ending for this for our life
Well,
and this interview.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Genuinely, Yogi Dada, I first of all appreciate all the wisdom that you shared. I appreciate the extra time that you gave. And I just want to give you the mic to share whatever you want to share, whatever you want to promote, so people know what you're up to.
Thanks. Well, it's been great to talk to you, and I've been really happy to be able to do so. I would just recommend that, as much as possible, as we've been talking about, that anyone listening to this makes a real effort to do something great with their lives, and that means, as we talked about, learning and practicing meditation, and trying to make the world a better place in your own way. And there are as many people as there are on this planet. There are as many ways to make a difference. If you want to learn meditation, you can get in touch with me, and I'll put you in touch with a teacher near you. And you can also read my book. If you could let people know they can where they can get my book, and I go into a lot more depth. I guess what we've talked about just now has been a kind of like an overview of what I go into in the book. The main thing is to, as I said before, less screen time, more real time, more time alone, more time with yourself, more time connecting with your inner self, and that means meditation, self-realization and service to all, meditation and helping others as much as you can.
That's I'm gonna put all the links so people can check out your book and your meditation service down below. And as a summary, it's kind of a summary of self-realization and service, all for the sake of becoming one with the one.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so again, thank you so much for your time, Yogi Dada. And
Thank you.
And I wish you nothing more but love, joy, and peace, more of the infinite.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
And so this is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed. First of all, I want to thank you for investing your precious time to making yourself a happier high performer. I love having these spiritual talks. It brings love. It brings so much happiness to my heart. And I hope it does the same for you. The part that resonated for me the most was the one about service and the fact that you don't really need to be meditating and sitting down to awaken, but you can do it through your day-to-day life just by changing your perspective rather than selfishly acting with the mindset of what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me. You act from the mindset of how can I be of service in anything I do. That doesn't mean you can't make money. That doesn't mean you can't have as a byproduct success and all the rest. But it's just having that perspective shift changes everything in your life. And trust me, I say that from experience. Your actions will be more pure, you'll be more happy, and you'll feel much more satisfied with life. Like an amount that's not even comparable. And you're going to get, I have a really good friend who's called Ryan, my best friend. And he used to be really confused before and stressed and anxious and overthinking. And he got into this foundation that helps poor people. And he tells me how service just fills his heart. How good it feels to just be of a helping hand to someone else. So maybe look for one of those organizations or try to do it as a simple act of kindness in your daily life. But do it with the mindset of, how can I serve selflessly, as Yogi Dada says. And so If you've enjoyed this podcast, my goal is to make it the number one spiritual development podcast in the world in the next 365 days. And this is not coming from a place of ego. It's more that I really want to have this message reach as many people as possible. So if you know or think of someone that it might help, consider sharing. And it really helps us when you subscribe. Most of the people watching are not. But when you do, I'm able to, first of all, increase the production. I'm able to get better guests. I'm able to have these meaningful conversations, but at a bigger scale. And so just this one like or subscribe or sharing with your friend could be a really, really powerful, could be a really powerful act. Because I genuinely want to share spirituality. I want to share how to live a rich, enlightened, and meaningful life. Because in my opinion, there's no point in living if it's not that way. And the more you watch and listen to these episodes, the more you'll realize for yourself that there is something beyond this physical world, inside of you and inside of everyone, that is pure love, that is oneness. And so this is the goal of this podcast. And so consider subscribing if this is something that you want to cultivate. And so this has been your boy, Aji. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rich Inside podcast. We release episodes every Sunday at 5 a.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. GMT plus 2. And all I want to say is Namaste.